Everyone keeps asking me how it all collapsed so quickly, like I'm supposed to have some kind of supernatural understanding of Marcus's complete transformation. The reality is, I created something incredible with that man over a decade, and he destroyed it all because he couldn't accept a little innovative thinking. But I'm jumping ahead. When Marcus and I first became a couple, I recognized he was the kind of person who needed direction. Not in a negative way. He was kind, dependable, had a solid career, but he didn't have that sharp decisiveness that moves life forward. I was the one who insisted we make it official after all that back and forth uncertainty in the early days. I was the one who organized our wedding ceremony, located our first place, and when his employer presented him that relocation opportunity to Austin, I'm the one who declared we should accept it. Same situation when my advancement materialized and we needed to relocate to Portland. Marcus would have invested weeks creating advantages and disadvantages charts, but I could perceive the larger vision. For nearly 8 years of matrimony, this arrangement functioned flawlessly. I managed the significant choices, he managed the routine matters. And we constructed a genuinely strong existence together. We had the attractive home with the excellent educational district, we both had professions we'd worked diligently for, and we were finally at the stage where beginning a family was logical. I'd completed my investigation, monitored my patterns, purchased the fertility indicators, the complete process. This was going to be our next major endeavor together. Except after 7 months of attempting, absolutely nothing was occurring. Now, I'm not the kind to simply wait around hoping circumstances improve independently. I believe in pursuing action, obtaining responses, determining what the obstacle is so you can resolve it. But Marcus, he kept insisting we should allow it more duration and not worry about it, like we were discussing cultivating vegetables instead of establishing our family. Bitterly, meanwhile, I'm observing all my acquaintances share their pregnancy updates on social media, and I'm calculating how much older I'll be by the time we determine this out. The entire circumstance was driving me insane. I'd awaken every morning considering today might be the occasion. And then 14 days later, I'd begin my cycle and feel like we'd squandered another month. With frustration, Marcus didn't seem to comprehend the urgency whatsoever. He'd even instruct me to calm down, as if calming down was going to magically repair whatever was malfunctioning with his biology. Finally, I stood my ground and declared we were both obtaining fertility examinations. Marcus became all uncomfortable about it, like I was challenging his masculinity or something, but I didn't care. We required answers. So we proceeded through all the examination procedures, waited in those clinical medical facilities, completed all the awkward protocols, and you know what they informed us? Nothing was clearly incorrect with either of us. We should just continue attempting. Continue attempting? Like that was some kind of genius medical guidance? So we continued attempting for another 6 weeks, and still nothing. By this stage, I was beyond exasperated. I'm monitoring the schedule. I'm documenting everything precisely. I'm executing everything the physician recommended. And Marcus is just going through the routine. Like, this is all perfectly standard. That's when I understood I needed to consider alternative approaches. I'd been acquainted with Derek for about 2 years through some professional associations. He was a minister at one of the larger congregations in town, educated, articulate, and most significantly, he comprehended that sometimes existence requires challenging choices. When I contacted him, I was completely transparent about the circumstances. I informed him my husband was unable to conceive, and I was exhausted from attempting and attempting with no outcomes. I needed to try someone else, and I needed confidentiality. Derek understood it immediately. He didn't make it strange or sentimental. He recognized this was about generating life, not some trivial romantic situation. We arranged meetings a few occasions over the duration of 8 weeks, and honestly, it was liberating to be with someone who handled the circumstance like a mature individual. Derek was self-assured, determined, and he didn't require me to guide him through every phase of the procedure. And it succeeded. Within 8 weeks, I was expecting. I'll never forget the moment I informed Marcus. He was so delighted, so enthusiastic about becoming a parent. And I felt this tremendous fulfillment knowing I'd made it occur. I'd resolved our obstacle when he couldn't. I'd pursued action instead of just hoping circumstances would magically improve. Watching him discuss infant names and room decorations, I loved observing him that enthusiastic, that concentrated on our future. This was the Marcus I'd developed feelings for, inspired, planning forward, actually assuming responsibility of something significant. Then his device alerted while he was in the bathroom. The message notification on his display stated, "How's my child doing?" And I felt this icy sensation in my stomach because I knew precisely what was about to occur. Nervously, Derek had been monitoring regularly about the pregnancy, which was considerate, but he'd been messaging Marcus's device by error instead of mine. By the time Marcus exited the bathroom and observed the message, I was already attempting to determine how to explain this without him completely losing his composure. But Marcus didn't provide me an opportunity to clarify anything. He just started examining through my device, locating all my communications with Derek, reading everything I'd stated about him being unable to conceive and requiring someone else to assist us get expecting. I watched his expression transform as he read, and I could tell he was about to make this entire situation way more theatrical than it needed to be. I attempted to settle him down, attempted to clarify that this child was ours, regardless of who assisted me conceive it, but he was already spiraling. He kept stating the child was very likely not his, and I knew I'd decided to be intimate with someone else, like I'd committed some horrible offense instead of resolving our fertility obstacle. I started weeping because I could observe he was determined to destroy everything we'd constructed together over something that didn't even matter in the extended perspective. Defensively, I informed him the child was ours and didn't belong to Derek, which was accurate. Derek was just assisting us out. But then Marcus questioned how I could know for certain the child was his if I thought he was unable to conceive. Bitterly, I understood he was going to use my own statements against me instead of valuing what I had accomplished for our family. That's when I should have recognized Marcus wasn't the man I thought he was. Instead of acknowledging that I'd pursued action to provide us the family we both desired, he was making it all about his wounded emotions. Instead of being appreciative that I'd located a resolution, he was behaving like I'd betrayed him somehow. What I didn't know was that while I was attempting to have a mature discussion about our circumstances, Marcus was capturing images of my communications and contacting divorce attorneys. He was organizing his whole retaliation operation while pretending to process what I'd informed him. 2 weeks later, some individual appeared at my residence with divorce documentation. I couldn't believe Marcus would surprise me like that. The man who couldn't decide what to request at dining establishments had somehow managed to employ an attorney and file for divorce without stating a word to me about it. He documented everything, prepared his whole situation, and then served me documentation like I was some stranger who'd wronged him. The whole divorce procedure was a catastrophe, but at least the court system acknowledged what was actually occurring. I obtained the residence, I obtained financial support, and Marcus had to compensate for his choice to discard our marriage over something that could have been resolved. The judge could observe that I was the one attempting to maintain our family together, while Marcus was fleeing from his obligations. Even after the divorce was completed and the paternity examination verified that Derek was the biological candidate, which I'd been transparent about from the beginning, I thought maybe Marcus would come to his awareness. Instead, he decided to get vindictive. First, he somehow got printed materials created with Derek's photograph and information about our arrangement, then distributed them around Derek's congregation. Derek ended up having to resign from his role, which was completely unjust since he'd just been attempting to assist a couple establish their family. Then, Marcus accessed into my professional email and transmitted confidential materials to my supervisor and colleagues, putting my employment in danger. 5 years of establishing my reputation at that organization, and he attempted to destroy it all because his pride couldn't accept the reality. Pause heavily. The worst element was when he arrived by to collect his possessions from the residence. Softens voice. I was attempting to be mature about everything. Even informed him I was willing to accept him back if he could get past his pride and bitterness. I mean, we'd constructed an existence together, and I was about to have a child who required stability. But he just loaded his containers into his vehicle like I hadn't stated anything whatsoever. I thought that was the conclusion of his little retaliation campaign. But apparently, Marcus had one more strategy up his sleeve. Last week, he messaged me stating he'd been considering everything and he missed me. He suggested we arrange a meeting at this dining establishment about 4 hours away to discuss providing our relationship another attempt. I was doubtful, but part of me thought maybe he'd finally understood what he'd discarded. So, I drove 4 hours, 8 months expectant, to meet him. I waited in that dining establishment for 2 hours before I understood he wasn't arriving. When I attempted to contact him, his number was restricted. When I attempted to message him, the communications wouldn't transmit. I had to drive 4 hours back to my residence alone, knowing he'd organized the whole situation just to waste my time and make me look pathetic. That's who Marcus really turned out to be underneath all that pleasant person routine. The man I thought I'd married would never have been so cruel, so manipulative. But I guess when people reveal you who they really are, you should believe them. Now I'm raising Emma by myself, which honestly might be superior than attempting to co-parent with someone who maintains resentments like that. Derek's out of the situation completely after the congregation circumstance, which I comprehend, even though I think Marcus went way too far with that whole public humiliation thing. My parents have been encouraging, and even Marcus's parents contacted to state they were sorry about how everything turned out. I've got a solid employment despite Marcus's attempt to undermine it. I've got the residence, and I've got a beautiful daughter who's gonna grow up knowing her mother doesn't just sit around waiting for circumstances to occur. When there's an obstacle, you locate a resolution. When something isn't functioning, you repair it. You don't just hope and pray and cross your fingers like some people do. The whole experience instructed me that you really can't depend on anyone but yourself. I spent a decade thinking Marcus and I were a partnership, thinking we desired the same things and would collaborate together to obtain them. But when it came down to actually resolving our fertility obstacle, he was perfectly content to just continue attempting the same thing over and over, expecting different outcomes. That's literally the definition of madness. I pursued action. I located someone who could assist us get expecting. I made it occur when Marcus couldn't. And instead of being appreciative that I'd provided us the family we both claimed to desire, he discarded it all because his emotions got wounded. People keep questioning me if I have any regrets about how circumstances turned out. And honestly, the only thing I regret is not observing Marcus's true character sooner. Bitterly, I squandered years thinking he was this stable, dependable partner, when really he was just someone who collapsed the second circumstances got complicated. Real relationships require difficult choices sometimes, and he proved he wasn't mature enough to manage that. At least now I know where I stand. I've got my daughter, I've got my independence, and I don't have to deal with Marcus's passive-aggressive routine anymore. Emma is going to grow up observing what it looks like when a woman assumes control of her own existence, instead of waiting around for someone else to repair circumstances. And if Marcus wants to spend the rest of his existence being bitter about losing the best thing that ever happened to him, that's his decision. Some people just can't handle strong women who know how to get things accomplished. The amusing thing is, he probably thinks he won something with all his petty retaliation games. But look at the actual outcomes. I've got the residence, I've got our daughter, I've got a steady income, and I'm moving forward with my existence. He's living in some apartment somewhere, compensating me financial support every month. And he'll never get to be Emma's parent. He discarded his chance at having a family because he couldn't accept the fact that I was the one who made it possible. That's going to consume at him for the rest of his existence. Coldly. And honestly, he deserves it. I provided him 10 years of my existence. I resolved our biggest obstacle together, and I was even willing to accept him back after he'd humiliated me with divorce proceedings. But he chose retaliation over reconciliation, theater over family, and his pride over our daughter's future. So now he gets to live with those decisions while I raise the child he'll never get to know. And when Emma gets older and questions about her father, I'll inform her the reality that some people just aren't strong enough to handle real love, real commitment, and real resolutions to real obstacles. I'm better off without him, and Emma is better off without him. And maybe someday he'll understand what his pride cost him.